In attendance for today's big game was former Hawkeye basketball star Caitlin Clark, along with former teammates Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin.
What if I told you that one player could make an entire state fall in love with basketball? Caitlin Clark didn't just come home, she brought a whole new world with her. The energy in that stadium was electric, like everyone was touching a live wire of pure joy. But wait, it gets better. Clark's not just a basketball player anymore. She's become a symbol of what's possible when you ignore the haters and follow your dreams. And let me tell you, those dreams are taking her places no one ever thought possible.
As former head coach Lisa Bluter. In this clip here, you can see that the 2024 NCAA basketball finalists waving to the children at the UI Stead Family Children's Hospital.
Want to know how far? Keep watching. Remember when everyone said Caitlin Clark was too small for the big leagues? Yeah, those people are eating their words now. But let's rewind a bit, because Clark's journey from high school superstar to college phenom wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Picture this, a 5'11" guard from West Des Moines, Iowa, tearing up the high school courts. Clark was dropping 30 points a game like it was nothing, but when it came time for college recruiters to take notice, some of them weren't buying the hype. She's too small, they said. She'll never keep up with the speed of the college game. Others chimed in. Can you believe it? They actually thought Clark wouldn't be able to hang with the big girls. So Clark arrives at Iowa for her freshman year. And guess what? Those early doubters seemed to have a point. She struggled to find her rhythm in those first few games. Her shots weren't falling like they used to, and the speed of the game was giving her trouble. For a moment, it looked like maybe, just maybe, the critics were right. But here's where it gets good. Clark didn't let those early setbacks break her. Instead, she used them as fuel. She started putting in extra hours in the gym, working on her speed, her shot, her everything. And then, boom, it all clicked. Remember that game against Ohio State in her sophomore year? Clark went off for 42 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists. The Buckeyes didn't know what hit them. Or how about when she dropped a triple-double against Wisconsin, 30 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. That's when people started to realize this girl isn't just good, she's special. But you know what's really insane? Clark wasn't done, not even close. She kept pushing, kept improving, and then, well, let's just say she did something that made the whole basketball world sit up and take notice. You ready for this? Caitlin Clark became the all-time NCAA Division I scoring leader. That's right, a record that stood for over 50 years, shattered by the girl they said was too small for college ball. So yeah, Clark didn't just prove the doubters wrong. She demolished their arguments, set them on fire, and danced around the ashes. But here's the kicker. Breaking records was just the beginning of Clark's impact on Iowa basketball. She was about to change the game in ways nobody saw coming. So Clark broke records and changed the game. But you know what's even more mind-blowing? The way she brought an entire state together. We're talking about a celebration that turned Kinnick Stadium into the heart of Iowa. Football who? This was all about basketball, all about Caitlin. And when she stepped onto that field, man, you wouldn't believe what happened next. Picture this, 70,000 people packed into Kinnick Stadium, but not a football in sight. The place was electric, like someone had plugged the whole arena into a giant battery. Signs with Clark's name and jersey number were everywhere you looked. It was like the entire state of Iowa had shown up to welcome their basketball queen home. Now remember how some people doubted Clark's impact when she first started? Well, those doubters were nowhere to be seen in that stadium. The roar when Caitlin stepped out onto the field was deafening. It wasn't just loud, it was earth-shaking. You could feel the ground vibrate with the love pouring out from those stands. But Clark wasn't alone in this homecoming. Her former teammates Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin were right there with her, soaking in the adoration. These girls had been through thick and thin together, and now they were reuniting in front of the biggest crowd of their lives. You could see the emotion on their faces as they looked around in awe. The fans weren't the only ones feeling it. Current Iowa players were watching from the sidelines, their eyes wide with disbelief. You could practically see them thinking, this could be us someday. And the coaches? They were beaming with pride, like proud parents watching their kid graduate. As Clark made her way to the center of the field, you could feel the anticipation building. What was she going to say? How do you even begin to address a crowd this size, this passionate? When Caitlin finally stepped up to the mic, the stadium fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. And then she spoke. Her words were simple, but man, did they hit home. She thanked Hawkeye Nation for their unwavering support, for believing in her and her teammates even when others didn't. She talked about the journey, the ups and downs, and how Iowa had become more than just a school. It was home. As Clark finished speaking, the crowd erupted again. But this time, it wasn't just cheering. There were tears, hugs, and a sense that everyone had just been part of something truly special. But here's the thing, as incredible as this celebration was, it's just scratching the surface of Clark's impact. This homecoming, it's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a whole new chapter. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just change Iowa basketball, she changed Iowa, period. And the ripples of that change, they're still spreading, touching lives in ways nobody could have predicted. You think Clark's impact stops at the court? Think again. This girl's not just sinking baskets, she's raising an army of mini Clarks, all dreaming of following in her footsteps. And when I tell you how many kids we're talking about, your jaw's gonna hit the floor. Get this, since Caitlin Clark burst onto the scene, youth basketball participation among girls in Iowa has skyrocketed by over 30%. That's not just a bump, that's a full-on explosion. We're talking thousands of young girls lacing up their sneakers, hitting the courts, and dreaming big. Before Clark, women's basketball in Iowa was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly prime time. But now, it's the hottest ticket in town. Remember Jada Gyamfi? She's just one of the countless young players Clark has inspired. This kid used to think basketball was just a game, but after watching Clark dominate on the court, she's got stars in her eyes and a fire in her belly. Jada's not alone, either. At every youth clinic, every camp, you see girls with that same look, like they've just discovered their own superpowers. And it's not just the little ones feeling the Clark effect. Kylie Furbach, another current Iowa player, straight up admitted that Clark was a huge reason she transferred to the program. In her own words, "I just knew the culture obviously was insanely good." That's the power of one player to change not just a team, but an entire program's culture. But here's where it gets really interesting. Clark's not content with just inspiring from afar. No, she's getting her hands dirty, making real change happen off the court too. You've heard of the Caitlin Clark Foundation, right? This isn't just some PR stunt. Clark's pouring her heart into improving kids' lives through education, nutrition, and sports. She's out there running basketball camps, hosting clinics, showing these kids that with hard work and determination, anything's possible. Picture this, Clark at a recent event, holding out her championship ring to a group of wide-eyed kids. It's like she's saying, this could be you. That simple gesture, it's worth more than 1,000 motivational speeches. So yeah, Clark changed the game all right, but she didn't stop there. She's changing lives, changing futures, maybe even changing the entire landscape of women's sports in Iowa. And the craziest part, this is just the beginning. Clark's story is still being written, and she's taking an entire generation along for the ride. But don't think for a second that going pro has made Clark forget where she came from. If anything, it's made her connection to Iowa even stronger. Because for Caitlin Clark, this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about building a legacy that'll last long after she's hung up her jersey. Remember those ride or die friends from college? Now imagine you're all suddenly famous. That's exactly what happened to Caitlin Clark and her Iowa squad. But here's the real question. Can those friendships survive when you're living in different cities, playing for rival teams, and dealing with the pressures of pro sports? For Clark, Gabby Marshall, and Kate Martin, the answer is a resounding yes. These girls aren't just holding on to their friendship, they're flaunting it for the world to see. Social media's been blowing up with their posts, showing off their tight bond even after graduation. It's like they're giving a big middle finger to anyone who thought going pro would tear them apart. But let's be real, keeping those connections alive isn't exactly a walk in the park. With Clark tearing it up in the WNBA and her friends pursuing their own dreams, finding time to hang out isn't as easy as popping over to each other's dorms anymore. They're juggling intense training schedules, travel, and the constant spotlight that comes with being a sports star. But you know what? These girls are making it work, and they're doing it in style. During Clark's recent homecoming, the trio didn't just catch up over coffee. Nah, they went big. They headed straight to the Children's Hospital in Iowa, continuing a tradition they started back in college. Can you imagine the looks on those kids' faces when Clark, Marshall, and Martin walked in? It's moments like these that show their friendship isn't just about having fun. It's about making a difference together. And get this, they're not letting distance stop their shenanigans either. During Clark's visit, they teamed up for a TikTok video that had fans rolling. Just picture it. 3 pro athletes goofing around like they're still in college, laughing so hard they can barely finish the video. It's that kind of genuine joy that you can't fake, no matter how famous you get. But here's where it gets really good. Remember Coach Jan Jensen? Well, Clark's been keeping up a special tradition that'll melt your heart. Even with her crazy WNBA schedule, she made sure to be there for Coach Jensen's daughter's birthday. It's those little things, those personal touches that show Clark hasn't forgotten where she came from or who helped her get there. The highlight of Clark's return, it wasn't the packed stadium or the cheering fans. It was during a practice session when one of her teammates made an amazing play. Clark's reaction? Pure, unbridled joy. She celebrated like they just won the championship, showing that her connection to Iowa and her former teammates is as strong as ever. As Clark heads back to the WNBA, leaving Iowa behind once again, it's clear that her story with the Hawkeyes is far from over. It's evolving, growing, becoming something bigger than basketball. Because for Caitlin Clark, Iowa isn't just where she played college ball. It's home, it's family, and it's a bond that not even fame and fortune can break.